Hello everyone, and in this video I'm going to be updating the Haddonfield Survivor player tier list that I did earlier in the year. So since then we've had another season that I'm going to have to account for here. I've also had some other minor changes in my opinions on some of these players, even ones that weren't on this most recent season, so I wanted to update it for that. I also wanted to actually rank out the tiers, put everyone in order. So effectively I'm going to be ranking every player, because if I rank them all in the tiers, then yeah, it'll just be the order. With that said, I'll start by reordering the players who didn't play on Season 8, because the Season 8 people I'll have a lot more to say about. So let's get started. So Cyrus and Max are obviously staying as the top two. I mean, no one is probably going to dethrone them for the first two spots, for the time being, definitely. So Mackay and Elliot, I thought about changing them. I do think Mackay is better than Elliot, though, but it's pretty close. Mary's next. I am moving Bucci up. He is going here. I think his one game is very similar to most of the games Mary's played, but he's only played once, so staying here. He's a pretty good player in most of the aspects of the game. However, the threat management thing leaves a little bit to be desired, as he got targeted by the end, which is pretty similar to the games of the other players around here, so definitely deserves to be up here. After that, I am going Will, which might be a controversial opinion, as some people do not think his games are that impressive. However, as I said in the last video, I'm a big defender of Will's games. He doesn't get a lot of respect. However, he is really good at the strategic element of the game, pretty good at the social element, and I don't know, he's just really good at placing himself as a secondary threat so that he can turn on the other threat. And he's a little paranoid, but he's a pretty consistent player. He gets deep in the merge every time, so I have a lot of faith in him. And I should say that this tier list is about them overall as a player. So, I said this in the last video, but if someone performs poorly once, it doesn't mean their average is lower, so they're going down. It's about how I think they could do on any given season based on how their previous appearances, what that told me about their games. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's go back to the video. Next up, I'll keep Oshin, then I'm putting Chris, then Jane. Oshin and Chris are very inconsistent players, but have showed a lot of strong gameplay in the past. Jane is a very consistent player, pretty good at almost every aspect of the game, except for the one that I value the most, active strategic gameplay. However, can't really deny her consistency and her strength in the other aspects of the game, so she's staying up here. I am moving Ian down to B tier. I think I've overrated Ian's games in the past. He's not bad, but even on his one game he did really well on, he was kind of playing second fiddle to Max and was getting outplayed by him. So B tier I think makes a little more sense. I'll keep most of these players in the same position. I'm going to shuffle a little bit around. Moving Brian up there. Then I'm going Lucy, Ari. All of these players I mostly have the same opinion on. I'm just moving them around. I'm putting Samir down a little bit. Then I'm putting Parker over here. And I'm moving a lot of these players down to C tier. Declan is going down to C tier. Tovey is going down to C tier. I think I've overrated their games in the past. I'm also moving Scott down to C tier. Now I gotta reorder this. I think, Tovey and Scott are at the top of C tier now. I think they're more similar to Ryan and Arabella than I previously would have said in the last video. I'll go Ryan, Caleb. Okay, all the players who weren't on Season 8 are now approximately in the spot that I want them to be. So we're going to move on to Season 8 players, and I'll have a lot more to say about them, and I'm going to go in reverse order, so from the first boot on. So first off, we're starting up with Steven, who is moving down. I think Steven had room to prove that he was a great player. He had him in the middle of A tier last time, so he didn't do that. Now, you could say that his game where he did really good was a fluke, but you could also say that about the game where he did really bad, this most recent one. So I'm going to average him out and put him in C tier. I think I am going to have him sort of in the middle also, around Declan. I think he's a pretty similar player to Declan, honestly. Like, he's good at some of the aspects of the game, but, like, doesn't actually know what he's doing. So, and he's well-liked enough, so he could get a win. So I think he belongs more with, like, players like Declan and Phil. Moving on to the second boot, and also a new player, Grayson. Grayson didn't really get to play. I mean, he was booted in the first tribal that he attended. He technically was in the majority alliance, though, and wouldn't have been voted out if Michael didn't have the idol. However, he was still voted out in a situation where it was not beneficial for some people to do so, so, like, that's not good. So he's going in D tier, like, probably at the bottom of D tier. Next up, third boot, we have Michael. And I actually don't think this was terrible for Michael. I mean, like, yes, he was voted out pretty early and would have been the first boot on his tribe if he didn't have an idol. But I'm still putting him at the top of D tier. I mean, I think he's not bad. I think he's similar to someone like Evan. So, after that we had Harry, who I don't really think should be knocked too hard for this game. I mean, he didn't do super well. I think he belongs somewhere around the Evan and Ben type players. I mean, he knows what he's doing, sort of, but, like, isn't super active. I mean, in this most recent game, he did get into a majority alliance on the original Green Tribe. So, I mean, he at least did that. So, I think a B tier player, I think he's just going to stay about where he was. I'm also not going to fault him because he was a big threat coming into this game and didn't really have a super advantageous cast for him. I mean, he didn't know a lot of them, so he's going to stay in B tier. After that, we had Giancarlo, who is moving out of F tier because he definitely played better this time. He's going to the bottom of D tier. No, here. Giancarlo's game on this most recent season wasn't great. I mean, he was sort of in a majority alliance on his original tribe, so that's why he's going up into D tier. He survived a couple rounds. They got rid of Michael successfully. He lost Grayson, which wasn't good. And he wasn't going to get voted out at that one tribal if Evan hadn't won immunity. So, I mean, not super bad, just not super active. He'll go in D tier. Pierre. I have Pierre in C tier. I have a lot of high hopes for Pierre. I think he's a player who should be really good, but hasn't really displayed that. I am still putting him in at the very top of C tier. However, his games do leave a lot to be desired. I mean, his most recent game, he said that he made the best decision at every round, which is not true. He should not have voted out Harry. That was dumb. He let Aiden, Lauren, and Dom have the majority. He just surrendered it to them, and they voted him out. So, it's kind of his own fault. However, I do think he's overall a good player. I mean, he's good at most of the aspects of the game. Well-respected enough. Pretty good socially. He belongs in C tier. Next up, we had the merge boot, Grace, who was also going in C tier, more towards the bottom. Not super active, but definitely good enough socially to be integrated into alliances. That's about it. So, C tier, pretty middle of the road. Evan was next. Evan's game on Season 8 was basically a quintessential Evan game, getting to the merge, being okay socially, wanting to make some moves, and then getting taken out pretty early in the merge. I mean, that's basically what he's done, like, 3 times at this point. It didn't really change my opinion on his game. He's staying exactly where he was. Next up, we had Lauren. Lauren's going in B tier. I think, like, just below Evan and Ben type players. It was pretty quintessential second in command game to Chris. She was targeted a lot at certain points. She would have gone home in a couple rounds, so I can't put her too much higher because she was being targeted a lot and kind of got taken out despite not being, like, the biggest threat to win. So, I mean, I think B tier is good. She's active strategically, pretty good socially, so I think B tier makes sense. Next up, we have Dan. And Dan played his best game so far. I mean, he got 5th place. He was not playing a strategic or social game at all. However, I am moving him up to C tier. I'm putting him at the bottom of C tier. Dan's game wasn't great. However, he is such a well-liked person that he could just win a jury vote by being not a threat, which is honestly similar to people like like a Parker or whatever. Like, and he's decent at the challenges too. So like, yeah, he's played a lot of terrible games, so he can't be that much higher than C tier, but there are some redeeming qualities to Dan as a player, so C tier definitely. Chris is going in A tier, at the bottom of A tier, but he's going in A tier. I mean, his game was really strong. He had control over his original tribe despite not really knowing very many people. He made bonds with people he didn't know. Grace, sort of Giancarlo, Carson. He executed some blindsides, most notably on Giancarlo. At the merge, he was able to get Dan to join him, which was like kind of a weird situation, but for some reason Dan joined him for like several votes, so I'm giving him credit for that. He was close to winning the game. I do think he needed to get there without Aiden, and he was too loyal to Aiden. He also kept getting undermined by Aiden, so I can't put him that much higher, but he's a very active and very good strategic and social player, so A tier, definitely. Moving on to the finalists. First, we're going to talk about Dom, who I think is a really good player. I mean, I'm putting him up here. I'm putting him like above Bucci, like borderline top 5 player of all time. He got to the end twice. And a lot of this is actually because of his Season 7 game. I've reassessed his Season 7 game, and I think it's a lot better than I originally thought. I think Bucci was right. Like, Dom really did control a lot of these votes. All of these flips that happened, like first Makai got out, then they flipped and voted Mary out, and then they flipped and voted Bucci out, then they flipped and voted Will out. Even though Dom only took credit for that last one, he was still instrumental in most of those votes happening. So honestly, I think he deserves a lot of credit for it. He positioned himself very well in the middle of the game despite not knowing anyone really, and I was pretty impressed by it. Yes, he's a terrible speaker, which he displayed in both of his seasons. However, very good strategically, very good physically, pretty good socially, and I mean, he's a consistent player, obviously. He's never been voted out before, and he did that himself, unlike some other players. So, I mean, definitely easy A tier for me, honestly. Next up, it's time to talk about Carson. So, I'm not really sure what to do with Carson. He's definitely moving up. I think C tier, somewhere around here, like lower-ish C tier. I think Carson is an inconsistent player. He obviously has the potential to get voted out early, which prevents him from getting that much higher. However, he was good at managing his threat level and flipping between the sides to strategically put him in an optimal situation to get to the final 3. However, I think he plays a little too passively, and people don't really see him as a threat, which is okay. However, it can cause you problems for winning the game. So I think C tier to average him out because of the fact that he could be an early boot and because he could also get to the end. So I don't know. He is an active strategic player, so he's not that bad. I think C tier makes sense for Carson. Lastly, let's talk about the winner of Season 8, Aiden. Now, this might be an unpopular opinion, however, I'm putting Aiden in S tier. Even with his Season 7 game in consideration, I think Aiden is very similar to Max. Just their games were played in reverse. I think Aiden's Season 8 game was almost as dominant as Max's Season 3 game. He had complete control over most of the votes that happened. He got to his optimal final 3, and he won 4 challenges. He basically had a stranglehold on the game, and won with a pretty dominant jury vote showing. His Season 7 game is honestly pretty similar to Max's All-Stars game. A lot of control early on in the game, and then was seen as too big of a threat and taken out in the mid-game. I honestly think Aiden is a very strong player, and on any given season, I think his social and strategic ability and his speaking ability can easily get him to the end of the game and can get him the win. So, for me, he's not touching the top 2, but I think he's S tier, honestly. Alright, so that's everyone from Haddonfield Survivor, ranked in a tier list, and ranked within their tiers. So, this is my exact ranking of all the players, well, most of the players, that have played in any season of Haddonfield Survivor. Obviously, my opinions could change in the future. However, this is what I'm feeling right now. So thank you for watching, and stay tuned for Season 9, maybe? I don't know.